Okay, so this is a translation and a discussion of the Aeneid, Book 12. We're going to be going through lines 919 through the very end, which I think is all the way through 952. So, it is going to be a little bit of a longer video, but nevertheless, let's go ahead and get started. So, Aeneas is your subject here, obviously, and Karuskat, he brandishes the fatal weapon to the one hesitating. Cunctor is a deponent verb, this form a present active participle, which is being substantized to imply the one, i.e. Turnus, as it were. He, sortitus, a deponent verb from the verb deponent sortor, that is going to mean like to take advantage of or to grab a hold of by lot, if you would like. And so sortior, sorti, sortitus, to obtain. So he, having obtained the opportunity, the fortune with his eyes, he sees it's at an advantage. I use the example of the analogy in which, let's say you're playing something like soccer and you see that your defender has become out of position, has made his weight shift to the wrong foot, and that is the moment that you strike and attack the goal. And Aminus, far off, at a distance, again with my analogy for soccer, outside of the box. If you have to try and score outside of the box, you better blast that ball instead of when you're right in front of the net, where you could just flick it with any part of your foot. But here, at a distance, far off, he hurls that fatal weapon with his whole body. When you take a shot on goal outside of the box, you indeed got to put your whole body into it to make it go. And that is exactly what he has done with the spear against Turnus. And so, in such a way, never do rocks, having been riled up, do they bellow, do they scream from a wall catapult. And so, it is saying that the force and the sheer noise as made by the hurling of the spear is like that of a siege machine against some city's walls. And that's what it means by murale tormento, from a wall catapult. And nor, do so great thunderings, do so great cracklings leap forth, and that is what desultare mean, from lightning. It's where we get the English word fulmination, as it were. And so, we continue on. The hasta, the spear, bringing dire death. The likeness, and I'm interpreting the instar as being an appositive to the hasta. What that hasta is, the likeness of a black tornado. That spear, the one bringing dire death, it flies, and it recludits, it reveals, it opens up, if you would like, and it reveals the oras, the shores, the borders of the breastplate. So in other words, it is going into the interior of the breastplate and puncturing it. And it reveals the extreme orbs of the sevenfold shield. Remember that shields in this time period is going to be composed of layers of animal hides and bronze, and through those layers, the shield gains its strength, as it were. And so this javelin, this spear that is hurled by Aeneas is going to be puncturing through them. And then finally, having gone through the breastplate, having gone through the shield, and assuming he is crouching down, probably in a defensive position, is Turnus. That's why it goes to the breastplate, goes to the shield. It finally is going to end up screeching, still referring to that hasta, as it were. It goes across through the middle thigh. And so therefore he gets struck in the thigh and the femur, which is the biggest and strongest bone in your thigh. Huge Turnus, having been struck, perfect passive participle, he falls to the earth on double knee. And so he goes with that. When he is struck, he clumps down and is in a completely defenseless position. The Rutulians, they rise with a groan. I think of when at the end of a basketball game. Most recently there was a fantastic Elite Eight basketball game in the NCAA tournament between UConn and Duke. Duke was trying to get the ball across midcourt. All they had to do was that. They were up by 2, but all of a sudden the ball was stolen, and as soon as that 35-foot shot by the UConn player went up in the air, you can imagine all of the Duke players rising, just like the Rutulians, with a groan, and the whole mountain of them, I'm using of them by myself, but the whole mountain, it bellows all around, and the high groves send back the voice widely. So in other words, all of the yelling, no, when the shot goes in, when their hero Turnus has fallen, that's going to then reverberate off of the groves that are there, because it is indeed such a loud scream. We continue on. That guy, a humble suppliant. And that guy is referring obviously to Turnus. Present active participle, stretching forth his eyes and his praying right hand. Remember that precontem, a present active participle, is from precor, precari, precatasum. He says, indeed, I have earned it. I have deserved, and I do not deprecate. I don't pray against it. I'm not asking against it, as it were. Here, again, we've seen previously, for a deponent verb, and this one is from the verb deponent, utor, uti, usus sum, that the present singular imperative looks like the present active infinitive if it existed, because for a deponent verb it doesn't exist. See, tangere is a regular old infinitive verb, but not utere. It is the imperative. Use, and this is one of those verbs which include utor uti, fruor frui, fungor fungi, waskor waski, and potior potiri that require an ablative object or sometimes a genitive object. And so remember those 5. There are a couple more, but those are the most famous ones. Use your lot, your opportunity, your advantage. If, and we all know, si, nisi, numen, ne, all those ollies fall away. If any concern or care of a miserable parent is able to touch you, I beg. For, or that's not for, also there was for you a dative of possession that you often see with a form of the verb to be, such a father and kaises. And so what he's doing when he says, if any concern of a miserable parent is able to touch you, if you can think about your own father, and if the shoe were on the other foot and I were the one in a defenseless position, think about if your father would want me to kill you in that position. And that's exactly what he does by bringing up by name both, of course, Aeneas' dad and then his own father. Now, what we now have is, again, miserere, from misereor, miserere, miseratisum. That, again, for a deponent verb, it's imperative, singular, looks like the present active infinitive if it existed. And remember that this verb will take a genitive object, which is what we have here. Take pity upon the old age of Daunus, my dad, and return me, again that's an imperative, to my, as in peoples. And so, option A, return me to my peoples alive, because you think about how my dad would be real sad in the same way that your dad would be real sad. But then he offers up in here, option 2, return me to my peoples, whether you prefer. Now, mawis is a portmanteau from the verb malo, male, malui. Now remember that a portmanteau is a word that is created by squishing together 2 other words. Smog, smoke and fog. Blush, blood and rush. Or of course, brunch, breakfast and lunch. And so what we have here is we're squishing together 2 words. The first word is magis, which is the comparative of the adverb magnopere, which means more or more greatly. And then of course, you have here quolo. And thus, when you squish them together, you get malo, as in magus, wolo, male, which is in magus wele, and then malui. And it means, obviously, to want more or prefer. And so it says, whether you prefer my body having been despoiled from light, i.e. dead. So he's asking whether he's alive or whether he is dead, return me to my peoples, as it were. Now, he would obviously prefer option A, but at least with option B, he also gets brought back to his people, and presumably with a proper burial. We continue on. He says, you have won. Wenko, wenkere, wiki wictus. And the Ausonians, they perfect stem with an alternate perfect ending. We degere. If that long mark were not there, then it would be the infinitive, but instead it is the perfect third person plural. And the Ausonians have seen the one having been defeated, i.e. me, to stretch his palms. He's basically fessing up, they've seen that I've waved the white flag. Lavinia is your spouse. Nay tende, do not stretch with hatreds any further. That same word that was used by Jupiter in talking to Juno when he said, I forbid you to try, temptare ulterius, the first word of that line as well. So, sharp Aeneas, and I love this part, this is the same phrase that described Dido when Aeneas was yapping to her about all the reasons why he had to leave her. And so therefore, he, Aeneas, present active participle, rolling his eyes, he stood in his arms and he repressed. He pressed back his right hand. He hesitates. He is thinking in this moment, maybe I won't kill him. So indeed, he lowers his weapon. But then, of course, he sees the thing. And that thing is obviously Pallas's baldric. Remember when defeated in battle, your armor is stripped from your body, and often your opponent who has defeated and killed you will wear it like a trophy. And as such it was when Hector had killed Patroclus. He had tried to strip the armor from Patroclus' body, and did, thus necessitating that Achilles have new armor made by Hephaestus at the request of his mother. And so here is a great parallel, as we know that Homer and the Iliad is definitely Virgil's model. And so the same sort of kind of situation in which Turnus is going to meet his fate because he has killed that very good friend, young man of Aeneas, whom Aeneas had promised his father Evander that he would look out for him on the battlefield. So we finish it up. And now, the sermon, the speech had begun. Remember that koeparat is one of those three defective verbs that are always in the perfect system. Koepi, koepisse, meaning to begin. Odi, odisse, meaning to hate. And memini, meminisse, meaning to remember. They always will have perfect forms or pluperfect forms or future perfect forms. Here it is pluperfect. So that speech had begun now and now again to bend the one hesitating, that would be Aeneas, more. So he's thinking about sparing his life. When the Infelix Baltius, the unlucky sword belt, appeared on his tall shoulder, and the cingula, the belt itself, and it's plural here, so cingulum is the singular, but the plural cingula, we are reading it as though it were singular as well. No, I take that back. I apologize. Cingula is singular. It's first declension. My bad. Nevertheless, gleamed with known, and since we're describing it as belt, we will then call that buckles. With the buckles having been known, he recognizes it. It's familiar to him, as it were. And it is indeed the cingula of the boy Pallas, whom, having been conquered, Turnus had laid low. Remember that strawarat is sterno, sternere, strawi, stratus, as it were. And so, he had laid him low with a wound. So the boy, whom having been defeated, Turnus had laid low with a wound, and was wearing that inimical, hostile insignia on his shoulders. Ille, that guy, meaning obviously now Aeneas, after he drank in, perfect tense, with his eyes, the monuments of that savage grief and those spoils, the spoils of war, which for Turnus had been that sword belt, which is now his undoing, having been inflamed with furies and nominative with a phaco-is ending, terrible with anger, he says, from here, you, having been put on with the spoils of my people, i.e. Pallas, you should be ripped away from me. And again, should, because this is that subjunctive and it's asking a question, so the deliberative. And then he puts Pallas in anaphora in the nominative case. Pallas immolates you, kills you, destroys you with this wound. Pallas does it. And Pallas takes up this punishment from wicked blood. And so he is saying that it is Pallas who brings this death upon you, not I, Aeneas, but Pallas whom you, Turnus, had killed. Saying this thing, the fervid one, the burning one, buries his sword under his facing chest. And the limbs for that guy, dative case, nominative, Ilias, genitive, Ili. For that guy, the limbs are loosened with cold. The same kind of language when we first met Aeneas by name when he was about to drown. And Quay, his life, unworthy, but we in English want to have an adverbial kind of force, unworthily, but unworthy, his life flees with a groan under the shades, under the shadows. And so, it is going to then end abruptly, just like this. And kind of odd, too. Because we know that there are many elements and passages of the Aeneid that are rather propagandic in its kind of force, as it were. But here, we all know that Aeneas is a representation of Augustus. And yet, look how Aeneas is portrayed at the very end. He, and again, furiis acensus, having been inflamed by furies. This is almost the opposite of pietas, which is controlled dedication to the gods, to the family, to the country. But here, he's really not even in control of himself, but filled with rage. And it has been much debated over the millennia as to why would Virgil choose to end it like this, but he does, with the death of Turnus at the hands of Aeneas, and abruptly does his life, the unworthy one, flee with a groan under the shades. So, that is the whole of the selections of the Aeneid that you are required to make sure that you are familiar with for the AP exam. Good luck, keep studying, and thanks so much.